Let me begin by saying this very clearly, and I want you to listen carefully, because if you misunderstand this, everything else I say today will not work for you. Most people do not fail in life because they lack desire. They fail because they lack definition. You cannot succeed beyond your understanding, and you cannot live consistently if you do not know what consistency actually is. Write this down. Confusion is the enemy of consistency. We have been taught, sometimes even in church, that consistency is a feeling. We say things like, I just don't feel consistent, or I'm trying to stay consistent, or I'm waiting to feel motivated again. That language already tells me the problem. You are treating consistency as an emotion, and emotions were never designed to govern human life. God did not create you to be ruled by feelings. Feelings are indicators, not leaders. They are gauges, not governors. So let me redefine consistency properly. Consistency is not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Consistency remains. Consistency is not willpower. Willpower gets tired. Consistency endures. Consistency is not personality. Introverts and extroverts both succeed when they obey laws. Consistency is not talent. Talent without consistency becomes frustration. Talent with consistency becomes mastery. Here is the correct definition, and I want you to write it down carefully. Consistency is sustained obedience to known laws regardless of emotional condition. That definition alone will set some of you free. Notice what I did not say. I did not say consistency depends on how you feel. I said it depends on what you know and what you obey. Feelings are irrelevant in a lawful system. The Bible confirms this principle repeatedly. God never tells Joshua, if you feel like it, meditate on the law. He says in Joshua 1-8, this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. Then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Notice the language, day and night. That is consistency. No reference to mood, no reference to energy level, no reference to circumstances, just obedience. Let me say this slowly so it settles in your spirit. Any life built on feelings will eventually collapse. Feelings change with weather, with people, with finances, with seasons. Laws do not change. God himself says in Malachi 3-6, I am the Lord, I do not change. And because God does not change, the laws he establishes do not change either. Hebrews 13-8 says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That means the principles that worked yesterday will work today, and they will work tomorrow. The problem with inconsistency is not that people are lazy. That is a shallow accusation. The real problem is that people have placed their lives under emotional leadership. And whenever emotions lead, discipline collapses. Proverbs 25-28 says, a man without self-control is like a city broken in two and left without wall. In other words, when discipline is absent, anything can invade your life. Fear, distraction, excuses, temptation, fatigue. Consistency, therefore, is not something you try to do. Trying is evidence of uncertainty. Consistency is something you submit to. You submit to laws. Gravity does not ask how you feel before it works. Fire does not check your emotions before it burns. In the same way, the laws that govern success, discipline, growth, and excellence do not consult your feelings. They respond only to obedience. God himself models consistency. Psalm 119-89 says, forever, O Lord, your word is settled in heaven, settled, stable, reliable, predictable. God is consistent because he is lawful. And since you were made in his image, Genesis 1:26, you were designed to live the same way, governed by truth, not driven by emotion. So here is the conclusion of this section, and I want you to hear it deeply. Consistency is not an emotional achievement, it is a legal outcome. When you align your life with the laws God has already established, consistency becomes inevitable. When you ignore those laws, inconsistency becomes predictable. And that brings us to the next critical truth we must understand, because now that we have defined consistency correctly, we must ask a deeper question. Why were you never designed to depend on feelings in the first place? That takes us into the law of design, and that is where we are going next. Now let us go deeper, because once consistency is properly defined, the next question must be answered honestly. Why do feelings have so much power over our lives? The answer is not spiritual weakness. The answer is ignorance of design. And wherever design is misunderstood, abuse is inevitable. Write this down carefully. You cannot function properly if you do not understand how you were designed. Everything God creates is designed to function in a specific order. God is not a God of confusion. 1 Corinthians 14:33 tells us plainly, God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. Peace is not an emotion. Peace is order. Confusion is not chaos. Confusion is disorder. Whenever something is out of order, it will malfunction even if it is powerful. You were designed as a triune being, spirit, soul, and body. 1 Thessalonians 5:23 says, may your whole spirit, soul, and body be preserved blameless. Notice the order. Spirit first, soul second, body last. That order is not poetic, it is legal. God was revealing the hierarchy of leadership within the human being. Your spirit was designed to lead. Your soul, which includes your mind, will, and emotions, was designed to process. Your body was designed to respond. Feelings belong to the soul and the body, not to the spirit. Therefore, feelings were never designed to be leaders. They were designed to be servants. When servants begin to rule, the kingdom collapses. This is why Proverbs 16:32 says, he who rules his spirit is better than he who takes a city. Notice what God praises, not emotional expression, not emotional honesty. He praises self-governance. Kingdoms rise and fall based on leadership, and your personal life is a kingdom. If your feelings rule your life, you are living under emotional dictatorship. Let me say this clearly. Your feelings were designed to report, not to decide. They tell you what is happening, but they do not tell you what to do. The moment you let feelings decide your actions, you have reversed divine order. And reversed order always produces frustration. Jesus himself is our perfect model. Hebrews 12:2 says, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. He did not enjoy the cross. He endured it. His feelings did not lead him. His assignment did. His purpose did. His obedience did. If Jesus waited to feel like dying, redemption would never have happened. This is why discipline is a spiritual matter, not a psychological one. Romans 8:6 says, the mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the spirit is life and peace. Governed. That is leadership language. Either your flesh governs you or your spirit governs you. There is no neutral ground. Many people say, I don't feel disciplined. That statement reveals the problem. Discipline is not a feeling. Discipline is a decision rooted in design. You don't feel discipline the same way you don't feel gravity. Gravity works whether you feel it or not. In the same way, discipline works when you obey it, not when you feel it. God never commands emotions. He commands actions. He says, be holy. He does not say, feel holy. He says, pray without ceasing. He does not say, pray when you feel inspired. He says, go into all the world. He does not say, go when it's convenient. Obedience in Scripture is always independent of emotion. This is why relying on feelings is exhausting. Feelings fluctuate, so your effort fluctuates. One day you're on fire, the next day you're tired. One day you're excited, the next day you're discouraged. But God never designed life to be lived on emotional fuel. He designed life to be lived on truth and law. Write this down. When feelings lead, consistency collapses. But when spirit leads, stability is restored. Isaiah 26:3 says, you will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. Stayed, fixed, anchored. That is consistency language. So the problem is not that you lack desire. The problem is that you have allowed the wrong part of you to lead. And until leadership is restored to its rightful place, discipline will always feel like struggle. But once design is restored, discipline becomes natural. Which brings us now to the next critical law. If feelings are not meant to lead, and if design demands order, then how do we practically establish consistency without daily struggle? The answer is found in the law of discipline, and that is where we must go next. Now, we arrive at one of the most misunderstood words in human language, and that word is discipline. The moment I say that word, many people tense up, because discipline has been presented to us as punishment, restriction, or suffering. But discipline is none of those things. Discipline is not pain. Discipline is protection. Discipline is not oppression. Discipline is order. And discipline is not bondage. Discipline is freedom. Write this down carefully. Discipline is self-management in alignment with divine laws. That definition alone changes everything. Discipline simply means you have decided in advance how your life will function. You do not negotiate with yourself every day. You do not wake up each morning asking your feelings for permission. You have already settled the matter. The reason consistency feels like a struggle to most people is because they are trying to decide daily. Decision fatigue is the silent killer of discipline. Every day you ask yourself, should I do this? Do I feel like it? Is today the day? And by the time you finish negotiating, your energy is gone. Discipline removes negotiation. Jesus never negotiated with his assignment. He did not wake up in the morning asking, should I preach today? He said in Luke 4:43, I must preach the kingdom of God to the other cities also, because for this purpose I have been sent. Notice the language, I must. Purpose eliminates options. When purpose is clear, discipline becomes automatic. This is why discipline must be a system, not an emotion. Systems function even when you are tired. Systems function when you are busy. Systems function when you are discouraged. Psalm 119 to 112 says, I have inclined my heart to perform your statutes forever to the very end. Incline means preset, adjusted in advance. The psalmist did not say, I try when I feel inspired. He said, I have inclined my heart. That is discipline. Let me say this very plainly. When discipline is in place, motivation becomes unnecessary. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline is faithful. Motivation visits. Discipline stays. Proverbs 13:4 says, the soul of the sluggard desires and has nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made rich. Notice that both people desire. Desire is not the difference. Discipline is. God never commands motivation. He commands obedience. Deuteronomy 28 begins with these words. If you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God, not if you feel excited, not if you feel inspired. If you diligently obey, obedience is a disciplined act, not an emotional one. Here is another truth you must write down. Discipline is decided once, not daily. You decide your prayer time once. You decide your study time once. You decide your sleep pattern once. You decide your standards once. Every time you redecide, you weaken discipline. James 1:8 says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Instability is the fruit of repeated indecision. This is why consistent people look calm. They are not fighting themselves every day. They are not arguing with their emotions. They already settled the issue. They built a system. They obeyed a system. And the system produces results. God himself operates by systems. Genesis 8:22 says, while the earth remains seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. That is a system. God does not wake up and decide whether the sun will rise. The system is in place. And because the system is in place, the results are predictable. This is the goal of discipline, predictable results. Discipline turns your life from an experiment into a certainty. When discipline governs your actions, success stops being a hope and becomes a consequence. So if consistency has been a struggle for you, hear me clearly. The issue is not your strength, your passion, or your sincerity. The issue is that you have not yet installed a system of discipline. But once discipline is installed, consistency stops being hard. It becomes normal. Now, once discipline is understood as a system, we must address another critical problem. Many people work very hard, yet they see little progress. They are disciplined in effort, but inconsistent in results. Why? Because discipline without skill still produces exhaustion. That takes us to the next law, the law of skill. Now let us confront a painful reality that many sincere, hard-working people must face if they are ever going to be free. Hard work alone does not guarantee success. Effort alone does not produce excellence. Sweat alone does not create mastery. And if you misunderstand this principle, you will spend your entire life tired, frustrated, and confused about why nothing seems to work despite your effort. The Bible explains this with remarkable clarity in Ecclesiastes 10. If the axe is dull and its edge is unsharpened, then more strength is needed. But skill brings success. That verse is devastating if you read it honestly. It tells us that it is possible to work very hard and still fail. Not because you are lazy, not because you are cursed, but because you are unskilled. Write this down carefully. Inconsistency dulls skill, and dull skill demands excessive effort. Many people are exhausted not because life is hard, but because they are trying to compensate for lack of skill with strength. God never designed strength to replace skill. He designed skill to reduce strain. Skill is simply the intelligent application of law. A skillful person is not necessarily smarter, they are more aligned. Proverbs 22:29 says, do you see a man skilled in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. Notice what elevates the man's skill, not effort. Skill attracts opportunity. Skill creates value. Skill demands consistency. Skill cannot be developed sporadically. You cannot practice once a month and expect mastery. You cannot obey laws occasionally and expect results permanently. Skill is formed through repetition, and repetition requires consistency. This is why many people start strong but never finish well. They confuse enthusiasm with training. Let me say this plainly. Talent is potential, but skill is developed potential. And development requires consistency over time. Jesus himself grew in skill. Luke 2:52 says, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. Increase, growth, development. Even the Son of God submitted to process. This is where many people quit. They obey long enough to start, but not long enough to sharpen. They pray a little, study a little, practice a little, then wonder why nothing changes. Sharpening takes time. Sharpening takes repetition. And sharpening feels boring to undisciplined minds. Here's the truth you must write down. Consistency transforms effort into efficiency. The more consistent you become, the less effort you need to produce the same result. That is why masters make things look easy. It is not easy, it is trained. This is also why inconsistent people burn out. They keep starting over. Every time you stop, you lose sharpness. Every time you quit, you dull the blade. Every time you delay, you increase resistance. And then you blame life, people, or God for what is actually a violation of law. God never promised to reward effort. He promised to reward obedience. Isaiah 1:19 says, if you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. Not if you are tired, not if you are sincere, if you are obedient. Obedience is consistent alignment with law. Skill grows when obedience becomes habitual. This is why discipline and skill are inseparable. Discipline keeps you practicing. Practice sharpens skill. Skill reduces effort. Reduced effort produces sustainability. Sustainability produces excellence. So if your life feels heavy, ask yourself this question honestly. Am I working hard or am I working skillfully? Because God never intended for you to struggle where you could be trained. And now we must move even deeper, because skill alone is not enough. Skill must be given time to work. Many people sharpen the axe but abandon the process too soon. That is why we must now understand the law of time. Now let us address another law that most people violate unknowingly, and because they violate it, they live frustrated lives. This law is not mysterious. It is not spiritual in the emotional sense. It is as old as creation itself, and yet it governs everything that grows, matures, develops, and succeeds. It is the law of time. Write this down carefully. Time rewards consistency, not intensity. This is where many people misunderstand life. They believe that if they work harder for a short season, they can bypass time. But time cannot be cheated, time cannot be bribed, time cannot be rushed. God himself submitted everything he created to time. Genesis 1 does not show instant maturity. It shows process. Evening and morning. Day 1, day 2, day 3. God could have created everything in a moment, but he chose sequence to teach us law. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. Notice the language. Purpose is not fulfilled instantly. Purpose unfolds through time. And time responds only to consistency. This is why bursts of effort fail. Bursts violate time. They demand results without relationship. Let me say this clearly. Time is not impressed by enthusiasm. You can shout, sweat, cry, and fast, but time will still require process. This is why Jesus said in Mark 4:28, the earth yields crops by itself. First the blade, then the head, then the full grain in the head. First, then. That is time language. Growth is progressive, not explosive. Many people quit because they expect immediate transformation. They start a habit for a week, don't see results, and conclude that it doesn't work. But laws do not fail. People abandon them too early. Hebrews 10:36 says, you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. Notice the order. You do the will first, then you wait. Then you receive. Write this down. Inconsistency resets the clock. Every time you stop, you delay harvest. Galatians 6:9 warns us, let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Due season implies timing that you do not control. Your responsibility is obedience. God's responsibility is timing. This is why small daily actions are more powerful than dramatic efforts. Daily actions partner with time. They respect time. They cooperate with time. Proverbs 13:11 says, wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. Little by little. That is consistency language. That is time honoring obedience. People who master consistency understand something others don't. Time compounds obedience. Just as interest compounds money, time compounds discipline. What feels small today becomes massive tomorrow. But only if you stay in alignment. This is why Jesus taught about patience repeatedly. Luke 8:15 says, but the ones that fell on good ground are those who, having heard the word with a noble and good heart, keep it and bear fruit with patience. Fruit does not come with excitement. It comes with patience. So stop despising small beginnings. Zechariah 4:10 asks, who has despised the day of small things? Small things are not insignificant. They are foundational. God builds greatness through accumulation, not shortcuts. The kingdom of God does not operate on urgency. It operates on order. If consistency has been difficult for you, it may not be because you lack discipline or skill. It may be because you are impatient with time. But once you submit to time, consistency becomes peaceful. You stop rushing. You stop quitting. You stop doubting. You simply obey daily and let time do its work. However, time alone is still not enough. Even when people understand time, they often sabotage themselves because of the environment they live in. Which brings us to another powerful and often ignored principle, the law of environment. Now we must confront a truth that many people avoid because it demands responsibility. Even disciplined people, even skilled people, even patient people can still fail if they violate the law of environment. Write this down carefully. Environment always outvotes intention. You can have good intentions in a bad environment and still lose every time. God himself proves this law from the beginning. Genesis 2 tells us that before God placed man into assignment, he placed man into an environment. The garden came before the job. Why? Because environment sustains purpose. When environment is wrong, purpose becomes burdensome. When environment is right, purpose becomes natural. Let me say this clearly. God never expected you to succeed in an environment designed to weaken you. That is why he removed Adam from the garden when Adam violated the laws of that environment. Not as punishment, but as consequence. When you break the laws of an environment, the environment expels you. This is why consistency collapses when people refuse to change what surrounds them. Most people pray for strength when God is asking them to change surroundings. You keep asking God to help you focus, but you sleep next to distraction. You keep asking God to help you grow, but you surround yourself with people who resist growth. You keep asking God to help you be disciplined, but your environment rewards laziness. Proverbs 13:20 says, he who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Notice the inevitability. Not might be destroyed, will be destroyed. That is law. Your environment does not negotiate with your prayer life. It produces fruit according to its design. Write this down. Discipline is easier in the right environment. Many people think strong people succeed anywhere. That is pride. Even Jesus withdrew from hostile environments. Luke 5:16 says, so he himself often withdrew into the wilderness and prayed. He controlled his environment to protect his assignment. If Jesus managed his environment, who are you to ignore yours? Your environment includes what you see, what you hear, what you touch, what you consume, and who you allow access to your time. Romans 12:2 commands us, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Conformity happens through environment. Transformation requires separation. This is why feelings change when systems change. People say, I don't feel motivated, but motivation often returns when distractions are removed. People say, I don't feel disciplined, but discipline grows when structure is installed. Feelings are responsive. They follow systems. They do not lead them. Let me make this statement strong and clear. You cannot maintain a disciplined life in a chaotic environment. Chaos feeds inconsistency. Order feeds excellence. God's kingdom is a kingdom of order. Psalm 119:133 says, direct my steps by your word, and let no iniquity have dominion over me. Direction is environmental control. Dominion begins where disorder is allowed. Some of you need to hear this. Changing your environment is not weakness, it is wisdom. Joseph changed environments and survived. Daniel changed environments and remained excellent. Abraham left an environment and discovered purpose. Ruth left an environment and found destiny. Environment always precedes elevation. So if consistency has been a battle, stop blaming your feelings and examine your surroundings. Ask yourself honestly, does my environment support the life I say I want? If not, the solution is not prayer alone. The solution is alignment. And once environment is aligned, something powerful happens. Clarity emerges. Focus strengthens. Discipline stabilizes. Which brings us to the next and final law in this sequence, because environment alone is still not enough. You must understand why you are doing what you are doing. That takes us to the law of purpose. Now we arrive at the deepest issue of all. Because even when discipline is installed, skill is developed, time is respected, and environment is adjusted, some people still struggle to remain consistent. And the reason is simple. They do not know why they are alive. Write this down carefully. Consistency is sustained by purpose, not pressure. Purpose is the original intent of the Creator for the creation. Purpose precedes production. God decided what you were born to do before. He decided when you would be born. Jeremiah 1:5 says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations. Notice that Jeremiah's assignment existed before Jeremiah's feelings ever did. This is why clarity produces discipline. When you know why you exist, you do not need to be pushed, you are pulled. Purpose creates internal energy. Purpose gives direction to discipline. Purpose removes confusion, and confusion is the greatest enemy of consistency. Many people are inconsistent because they are unclear. They wake up every day reacting instead of pursuing. They are busy but not purposeful. Activity is not progress. Motion is not direction. Proverbs 19:2 warns us, desire without knowledge is not good, and he who hastens with his feet sins. Desire without direction leads to waste. Jesus never struggled with consistency because he was clear about purpose. John 18:37 records him saying, for this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world. That sentence explains his discipline, his focus, his endurance, and his refusal to be distracted. Purpose settled his schedule. Purpose settled his priorities. Purpose settled his obedience. Write this down. When purpose is unclear, discipline feels forced. When purpose is clear, discipline feels natural. This is why people quit jobs, abandon callings, and drift through life. They are operating without clarity. They confuse survival with significance. God never created you just to be busy. He created you to be productive. Psalm 57:2 says, I will cry out to God Most High, to God who performs all things for me. Performs means completes, finishes, fulfills. God does not start things he does not intend to finish. And if he intends to finish something through you, he will require consistency from you. Purpose also defines what you must say no to. Many people are inconsistent because they are overcommitted. They say yes to everything because they don't know what matters most. Purpose brings focus. Focus protects discipline. Discipline produces consistency. Let me say this plainly. Confusion breeds inconsistency. When you don't know your assignment, everything feels optional. But when you know your assignment, excuses disappear. You don't need reminders. You don't need motivation. You move because purpose demands expression. This is why the Bible says in Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision and make it plain. Plain vision produces persistent action. Vague vision produces sporadic effort. If you want consistency, you must settle purpose. You must answer the question, why was I born? Until that question is answered, discipline will always feel like struggle. But once purpose is clear, something powerful happens. Consistency stops being a burden and becomes a lifestyle. Excellence becomes normal. Obedience becomes joyful, and growth becomes inevitable. Which brings us now to the practical application of everything we have taught so far. Laws are powerful, but laws must be applied. So now we move into a strategic reset, a simple, lawful way to rebuild consistency without overwhelm. This is what I call the 14-day consistency reset, and that is where we go next. Now let us bring everything we have taught into order, because knowledge without application produces pride, not results. Laws must be obeyed, not admired. And what I am about to share with you is not complicated, but it is powerful because simplicity is the language of law. Most people fail at consistency because they attempt to change everything at once. That is a violation of wisdom. God never overwhelms his creation. He trains it. Write this down carefully. God develops capacity before he increases responsibility. This is why Jesus never gave his disciples the whole assignment at once. He said, follow me. One instruction, one direction, one step, and through obedience, capacity was built. Luke 16:10 says, he who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. Faithfulness is trained in small spaces. The purpose of this 14-day reset is not to transform your entire life. It is to reinstall the law of consistency into your daily behavior. Once consistency is restored in one area, it spreads naturally into others. Laws are contagious when obeyed. Here's the foundation of the reset, and I want you to listen very carefully. One habit, one time, one environment, one habit only. Not 5, not 10. One, the reason many people fail is because they overload their will. God never demands overload. He demands obedience. Choose one habit that aligns with your purpose. Prayer, study, writing, skill development, exercise, or planning. Second, one time, same time every day. Not when you feel like it. Time removes negotiation. Daniel prayed 3 times a day at fixed hours, not flexible moods. Daniel 6:10 says, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed, as was his custom since early days. Custom, system, consistency. Third, 1, environment. Same place, same setup, same conditions. Environment trains the mind. Jesus went to the synagogue as his custom was. Custom creates consistency. Consistency creates mastery. Now hear this carefully. During these 14 days, feelings are irrelevant. Feelings are not consulted. Feelings are not asked for permission. Feelings are not negotiated with. Romans 6:16 says, do you not know that to whom you present yourselves slaves to obey, you are that one slaves whom you obey? If you obey feelings, they become your master. If you obey discipline, discipline becomes your servant. This reset is not about excellence yet. It is about obedience. Excellence comes later. First comes submission to law. You are not trying to feel consistent. You are training your life to obey structure. Let me say something that may offend your emotions, but will save your future. Do not expand during these 14 days. Expansion kills consistency at the beginning. God did not give Adam multiple assignments. He gave him one garden. Expansion comes after mastery. You will miss days emotionally, but you must not miss days behaviorally. You may feel tired, bored, distracted, but you must show up anyway. Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace. Later, harvest is delayed, not denied. At the end of 14 days, something powerful will happen. Your emotions will begin to align. Resistance will decrease. Discipline will feel lighter. This is because consistency reprograms desire. You do not discipline yourself because you feel strong. You discipline yourself until strength shows up. Let me leave you with this statement in this section. Don't try to change your life, train it. Training is lawful. Training is predictable. Training always works. Now, having given you the laws, the design, the discipline, the skill, the time, the environment, the purpose, and the strategy, we must close this teaching properly, not with excitement, but with certainty. We must seal this truth with kingdom declarations and final alignment. That brings us to the final section. Now we come to the end of this teaching, and I want you to listen very carefully, because how you leave a truth determines whether it becomes information or transformation. Everything you have heard today is not opinion. It is not philosophy. It is not motivational theory. It is law. And laws do not respond to applause. They respond to obedience. Let me remind you of the central truth that governs everything we have discussed. Consistency is lawful, predictable, and available to anyone who aligns with divine order. You do not need a special personality. You do not need extraordinary talent. You do not need more motivation. You need understanding and submission. God never designed success to be mysterious. He designed it to be inevitable. Romans 8:6 tells us again, to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is alignment with law. When you live according to how God designed life to function, struggle decreases and progress becomes natural. Write this down one last time. You do not break laws. Laws break you or bless you. Gravity blesses those who respect it and injures those who ignore it. In the same way, the laws of discipline, time, skill, environment, and purpose bless those who obey them and resist those who violate them. This is why the Bible says in Deuteronomy 30:19, I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life. Notice God does not force outcomes. He presents laws and allows choice. Life is the result of alignment. Death is the result of violation. Consistency, therefore, is no longer a mystery for you. It is no longer something you hope for. It is something you practice. Excellence is no longer pressure. Excellence is obedience repeated over time. Proverbs 4:18 says, the path of the just is like the shining sun that shines ever brighter unto the perfect day. Brighter, gradual, consistent, predictable. Let me speak prophetically but lawfully. If you obey what you have heard today, your life cannot remain the same. Not because of prayer alone, not because of fasting alone, but because law demands results. God is not mocked. Galatians 6-7 says, whatever man sows, that he will also reap. Consistency is a seed. Excellence is a harvest. You are not trying to be consistent anymore. Trying is over. Negotiation is over. Excuses are over. From today, you are aligning. You are submitting. You are training your life to obey order. And once order is restored, peace follows. Focus follows. Growth follows. Let me end with this final declaration, and I want you to receive it as a kingdom citizen, not an emotional listener. When you obey laws, results become inevitable. When you honor discipline, consistency becomes normal. When you submit to purpose, excellence becomes your lifestyle. This is not a sermon to admire. This is a constitution to live by.